أنا اتولدت سنة 1964. كانت أسرة فقيرة. اتولدنا، كنت أنا يعني أول طفل ولد في أسرتي، في الأسرة بتاعتي. كنت أكبر الأولاد في مخيم اسمه مخيم النصيرات. كان بيت صغير جدا. وطبعا الحياة اللي عشتها من البداية إن أنا بذكرش إني أنا عشت طفولة. فيما بعد لما كبرت كتير وعرفت كيف الأطفال عايشين، اكتشفت إنه أنا ما كنتش أحيا حياة الطفولة بالمنطق المتعارف عليه حاليا يعني. ومع ذلك أنا طفولتي بحن إلها وبتروقني، وبتمنى لو أرجع في العمر يعني من أول إني أنا أعيش الطفولة هاي اللي أنا عشتها. في طفولتي ما يعني زي ما حكيت كان في الحياة صعبة شوي، بس كان في حياة يعني كان في حياة الواحد لما يتذكرها بحنين. بتذكر إنه حتى ألعاب الطفولة أنا ما كنتش أعرف إنه في ألعاب، غير لما مرة شفت إنه في عروسة معمولة بشكل يدوي، مانيوال حدا عملها لطفلة، عملها أمها عن طريق الخياطة في البيت. قماش رث وحشت قطن وأشياء زي هيك. فأنا طلبت من أمي تعمل لي عروسة. يمكن هي اللعبة الوحيدة اللي أنا لعبت فيها، وعملت لي إياها بطريقة كتير بدائية، ولكن أنا كنت بحبها، كنت بعتبرها صديقتي يعني. عروسة صغيرة لا تسوى شيء، بس هي كانت لعبتي تقريبا المفضلة أو الوحيدة في طفولتي المبكرة. لرمزي طبعا اوف كورس. رمزي حبيبي اخويا. طبعا انا مشتاقه لرمزي جدا، بس احنا بعاد من زمان. اعتدنا على البعد، هو اعتاد وانا اعتدت. بس انا كتير مشتاقه للمة الاسره. كتير 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 نفسي نقعد كلنا مع بعض. احيانا بكون حلم يراودني، بس بشعر انه كانه صعب يتحقق، او كانه مستحيل ان اكون انا موجوده واخوتي الخمسه موجودين وابنائهم جميعا، نكون إحنا موجودين في جلسة عائلية، نضحك وناكل ونشرب ونتصور ونشوي ونحكي كلام من القلب ونحكي كلام عفوي والكل يكون مبسوط وسعيد. بحسه حلم بيراودني، كأنه ممكن يجي في حلم، هذا في حلم وأنا نايمة. طبعا مشتاقة لرمزي ومشتاقة لك كتير. مشتاقة لك أنت كمان تحديدا، خلي بالك. أنا مشتاقة لك لأنه أنت بنت رمزي أول إشي، ولانه انت حفيده امي وابوي، وانت انا بقول لك عمته، انت انتي. وفي نفس الوقت انت بحسك كتير قريبه منا، لانك حتى بحكي لاولادي قبل انا ما افتح وقلت لهم بحسها فلسطينيه بكل معنى الكلمه. هي امريكيه وتولدت في امريكا، ولكن هي فلسطينيه بسلوكها بشكلها. بحسها بتشبهني وبتشبه امي. بحسها من غزه، وإلها مستقبل كتير كبير، وحتشرف بيها إن شاء الله يوما ما. يعني أنا مشتاقة لكم والله جدا.
What was your life growing up? What do you remember about your childhood?
Well, it kind of depends on what part of my childhood I'm thinking of. Prior, the early childhood, say between the mid late 70s until the early 80s. I remember the beach. I remember playing with children, playing soccer. I remember playing hide and seek in the graveyard, which is very close to my house. I remember going to the mosque, my school teachers, my friends. So it was more or less pleasant memories, despite the fact that we were very much living under military occupation, but we didn't really feel it in our lives as oppressive as it happened after the first Intifada. That is the uprising of 1987. Life then kind of took a much darker turn. We were no longer allowed to go to the beach. The schools were closed. We were not allowed to leave the house after 8 p.m. Soldiers were everywhere, every single day. Someone was killed, or two, or three, or 10. Every few days there is a massacre somewhere. I lived in a refugee camp called Nusayrat, where a place that received a much larger share of casualties during the Intifada, mostly really children. And since I lived by the graveyard, that graveyard was a constant a place for kind of mourners to come and bury children one after the other, so that somewhat peaceful existence, and I say peaceful very cautiously, suddenly became an extremely violent period in my life, and I think at one point there was no childhood anymore.
What were your earliest memories of violence?
My earliest memories of violence, I would say that they are often affiliated with the Israeli army. Uh, you know, whenever the Israeli army is in our neighborhood, I mean, of course you would know. Kids will be standing at the water tower, and then they will declare El Jaish, the army, and everybody starts running, and then, within seconds, soldiers will come descending on the neighborhood, and the unlucky ones are the ones who get caught. It could be children, could be men, could be women. You never know. And whomever that ill-fated person who is caught is the one who's going to pay the price for that day, regardless of. You could be doing nothing. You don't have to be a fighter. You could be just a little child playing marbles with his friends, or some old man coming back from the mosque, or someone going to buy food from the market. You just got caught. You were not fast enough to run away, and then they descend on you like really, like, with all the bitterness and hate in the world, and then they would beat you up and brutalize you in every possible way. And if you're lucky, you make it. If you're not so lucky, you could be left with broken bones everywhere. Not just that, they could actually take you with them to the army encampment near our refugee camp. You could be left bleeding. They would deny you your visitations by the Red Cross and so forth. I've seen many of my friends going through this. At one point, I think I was about 12 years old when they actually came to our house, and they accused us of throwing rocks, and we were actually asleep. It was like 6 in the morning. We were not even up yet, and then they took us and they handcuffed all of us.
They took you?
Yes, myself and my two brothers. And they handcuffed us, and they were ready to do what was known at the time as the broken bones policy, which is, they would take children and they would break their bones, and we were kind of waiting for that, for our punishment to be meted out. And it was really, if it were not for my mom blocking them, kind of standing in the middle and taking most of the beating, and creating a situation in which all the women in the neighborhood gathered and start throwing rocks at the soldiers, and under that kind of resistance by the women, led by my mom, they finally left, and we survived. We were not beaten up. We were just, they roughed up my brothers and all of that. But then someone else had to take the beating for you. And somehow we still kind of saw ourselves as one of the lucky ones. Because many other kids, were truly brutalized, and many kids did not survive this kind of treatment. our house was located in a very strategic position within the refugee camp. Usually that's a positive thing because it's kind of towards the center of the camp. But when the uprising happened, when the revolution happened, it became perhaps the worst possible position. So it was my house here, then you have the martyrs graveyard, then you had the great mosque. Much of the protest and the resistance happened near the great mosque. Then you have the water tower, and the water tower is this kind of unusually high water tank in which the soldiers, the first thing they would do when they are in that area, they would claim it. They would climb on top of it. Snipers would position their guns all around it, and then they kind of wait for people, come out of the alleyways and from places where they can't see the soldiers, and they would snipe them one after the other. And my house is right there. That area was called the Red Square. It's just this poor dirt, dirt ground little place. It wasn't anything astounding, but it was called the Red Square because of the number of kids who were shot there. So whenever the soldiers passed by that area, they would immediately have to take over the water tower, and we would be watching them through little holes in our rusty door or in our windows. And they would be able to see us inside because the way Arab houses, at least at the time, were designed, you would have rooms around and you would have an open court area, and it doesn't have a roof. You have trees, you have, you grow some flowers here and there. So the soldiers would be watching you from the top. In order for you to go to the kitchen, to go to the bathroom, to go to another bedroom, you are actually exposed to them seeing you. So what you would do is you kind of develop this way in which you are jumping from one corner to the other in order for you to be able to get out there and notice.
In your own house.
In your own house, of course. At night, that's where the real horror starts, because then the jeeps would come in, followed by military trucks, and when confrontations were really bad, that's where the tanks roll in. And when you start hearing the roaring of the tanks coming from the highway into the camp, you know that you are up for a serious trouble. That's the time where our parents would start pushing out us, into the alleyways, kind of like jump out of the door and run as fast as you can to get to the orchards, because you know that blood will be spilled when the tanks are there.
What was the death of Grandma like?
Drama. I think one of the most difficult things about death is that when you are not mentally prepared for it, you don't kind of go through the stages of, whatever the stages are, denial, negotiations, anger, acceptance, and all of that. It's just something that when it just happens and it leaves you completely bewildered and confused, that's when it's particularly tough. My mom died during the Intifada. We did not fully fathom the nature of her illness at the time. There was not enough, hospitals were crowded, mostly of young people shot. She had a form of cancer that Gaza hospitals could not figure it out. We only understood that she had something serious when the Israelis beat her up, the Israeli soldiers, and then her body kind of like basically collapsed, and we thought it was because of the nature of the violence, but it turned out that there was something else going on, and eventually my father had to take her to Egypt. And again, as children, we really did not understand what was going on. In fact, I remember giving her a list of things to get me from Egypt on the way back.
How old were you?
At the time, I was 13, 14. And there was no communications because we did not have phones. And there was no form of communication, so we would never have known what is actually going on. And they just disappeared for 2 months, and then they came back. All I know is that people telling me we ran away from the refugee camp because we couldn't be in that very dangerous zone without our parents. So my dad hid us somewhere in a somewhat safer place on the third floor of a building. And all I remember that people saying that, oh, your parents are back, your parents are back. So I went running, and I was really, the only thing that was going on in my head is that whether they got me the music I asked for.
What music?
Oh, just some silly, you know, youthful Egyptian music that was like the hipster thing at the time. And I was just like really was just waiting for the tapes. And I was like kind of also a bit angry, like, what took you this so long, you know? But I was very happy and relieved that they were back. We really felt abandoned. We were out of money. There was nobody looking after us. And it was just me and my brothers. We were just like 5 boys in this tiny little place looking after each other. And my brothers were teenagers, basically. And then I kind of looked from the top of the building, and I just saw this truck. And on the back of the truck, there was a coffin covered with the Palestinian flag. And it took me a few seconds to actually understand. It's like, why is there a coffin? Or it's like, shouldn't there be bags as opposed to a coffin? You know, it's like maybe someone else died. Maybe someone else was shot somewhere else. And then I kind of went downstairs, you know, began running. But then I started like, what if that's my mom? No, there's no way. So it's like I wanted to run, but I wanted to slow down. I felt like if I slowed down, I kind of delay the news. But by the time I got downstairs, I think I figured it out. And we needed to bury her in the refugee camp that was already under military curfew. So how do you do that? You need to go to the Israeli army and you need to get a permission. Finally, they gave us a permission, but the permission was only 8 people were allowed to be at the graveyard at the time. So we agreed, and it was my father, my brothers, myself. I had to go to another refugee camp to fetch my grandma, her mom, who had no idea what was going on. And my dad told me, don't tell her anything. She was also under military curfew. I actually took this guy on a garbage truck, and he said, can you take me to grandma? My mom died. And he was kind enough to do it. And she said, what's going on? And I said, my dad will explain to you. And then we come on the garbage truck, and she sees the graveyard, and she sees my dad and my brother standing there. So she immediately understood, of course. But the thing that was really amazing, and that's really, ties back to the question about what do you miss about home, is like when the neighbors knew that my mom died, because we disappeared for months before that happened, and no one knew where we were, and it was a war and conflicts and uprisings and people getting killed, and nobody knew where anybody was. And then people knew that, oh, it's Zarefah, and she is being buried at the moment, and then the way that people just came out of their houses, and how each neighborhood, told the other neighborhood, and within minutes, you had thousands of people. The Israeli army didn't even know what to do. They opened fire, they shot 2 kids in the leg, and then they eventually disappeared. It was just an overwhelming amount of love and support that suddenly the 8 people became 8,000 people, So that was really tough. And I think that kind of immediate sense of loss was, kind of compensated, at least through a fleeting moment, with that kind of immediate sense of community. Yeah.
Israel launched its latest military offensive a week ago on July the 8th.
Artillery, tanks and jets pounded targets despite growing calls for a ceasefire.
Intensifying missile attacks are pounding the Gaza Strip.
When Israel conducted an air and ground invasion of Gaza, it lasted 3 weeks and left more than 1,000 people dead.
Israeli bombing in Gaza has intensified, with the Palestinian death toll now reaching more than 500, mostly civilians.
5 of the Palestinians killed so far were children, including this 11-month-old baby held in the arms of his father, who asked, "What did my son do to die like this?"
احنا طبعا بدت في رمضان وبشكل مباغت جدا. رحنا هدينا عندنا خيمه في الارض، خيمه رحلات، خيمه كبيره يعني كانوا الاولاد يقعدوا فيها في الصيف. فيومها لما بدت الحرب كان عمرو يزن واصدقاء لهم في الخيمه، خيمه وفيها تلفزيون وفيها قعده يعني كانوا يسهروا بالليل. فكانوا يتابعوا اياميها كاس العالم، وطلعنا نصرخ انا وابوهم او انا بالاحرى انه ادخلوا جوا في الحرب بدت. فبعدين صار عندنا انت جيت على المنطقه وعارف انها منطقه حدوديه، يعني احنا كانت منطقه خطيره. فبعدين على طول صار قرار، اتصلوا علينا الجيران قالوا انه انتوا لازم تتركوا البيت واحنا بدنا نترك البيت، هم بدهم يتركوا البيوت. يعني صارت الناس تهرب لقلب المدينه، لقلب المدينه. وطلعنا من البيت وصاروا البنات يصرخوا، كانت دلال ولميس ما كانت متزوجه. طلعنا من البيت واياميها كان الاجتياح البري تمام، وكان في اطلاق نار من الطيارات، وحمدي طلع البنات والولاد في هذه الظروف الصعبة جدا. حتى في ناس كتير لمونا، قال ليش تطلعون في سيارتكم؟ ليش ما استنيتوا الصليب الأحمر أو استنيتوا الإسعاف؟ لو تواصلتوا مع الصليب الأحمر كان أكثر أمانا، كان ممكن على طول تيجي قذيفة في الأولاد وهم طالعين يعني. بعديها قضينا حوالي 50 يوم مشردين من بيت لبيت ومن مكان لمكان. جزء عند ماجد كان، لأنه يعني ماجد ساكنة في عمق البلد. ماجد يمكن استضافت 20 شخص هي وزوجها، بتذكر أياميها. بعدين في صديق لحمدي أعطانا شقة وأنت كلمتني أياميها وطلعنا أنا ودار سيلفي وكذا. وتشردنا يعني، احنا ما كناش العيلة، كنا مع بعض أصلا. كان عمرو يزن في مكان وأنا في مكان وحمدي في مكان والبنات في مكان. يعني طبعا يعني كان إشي صعب جدا، لأنه بتذكر مرة حمدي أجى عشان كان في عندنا غنم ودجاج وكذا، اجى يحط لهم أكل، شاف واحد ميت في الأرض اللي قبالنا من الشباب المقاومين. يعني صار إنك تشوف حدا بموت عادي، إنك تسمع حدا بصرخ بيستنجد والناس مش قادرين يطلعوا يسعفوه ويتصفى دمه ويموت في الشارع اللي جنبك عادي. يعني إحنا الحرب كانت صعبة، هذه الحرب مش طبيعية.
I was not in Gaza during the 2014 war. I was in Europe at the time. And which in some strange way, sometimes being there is dangerous, not being there is tormenting. Because you feel that you can't be part of whatever effort to help the community cope with this. You know very little, you have so very little news. I couldn't get hold of my sister Suma. I had no idea what happened to her family. I had no idea what happened to my cousins. Once in a while, you would hear the name of someone getting killed or a family, and then it's like, oh, these are my neighbors. Oh, that's my cousin. Oh, that's my cousin's wife, and so forth. And again, you have this complete sense of helplessness that you really don't know how to deal with that situation. It was on Facebook that I actually saw that my house, my childhood home, the one near the graveyard, was actually bombed. And two of my neighbors, their twin boys, were killed. And that the mosque that we used to go to when we were little kids, learn Quran and just hang around with our parents, and was completely demolished, and several people inside were killed. And you kind of you discover these things through friends or on WhatsApp or Facebook, and then it kind of really accentuates that sense of helplessness that you have. Of course, the future I want for Palestine is not. It's not this. It's not a future of war and conflict. It's not a future of oppression and military occupation. It's not a future of injustice. It's the antithesis to everything. Because I truly believe that the Palestinian people. I don't believe anybody deserves this, but I also think Palestinians in particular, they don't deserve this. They have been tormented over the course of 100 years for designs and plots of someone else. They had no say in what has befallen their country, and they have no say in what is befalling their people right now. They deserve a moment of peace, a respite, a moment of justice, so that they can actually heal their wounds and rebuild their nation after this systematic destruction of 100 years.